Before we begin today, just a quick content warning for Quagmire, which is the second episode we're going to be talking about today. Spoilers for the episode, but if you are sensitive to animal abuse, just be warned, there are 2 animal deaths that are pretty on screen during the episode. One is Scully's dog, Queequeg, the other is an alligator.
Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, the X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And I think we're lacking in news.
We are, unfortunately. It might be over by the time you listen to this episode, but there is currently a 4th of July sale on for FileFest if you want to nab yourself a cheap ticket. But that's about all I have for you this week, I'm afraid.
Oh well, we'll sit and wait for reboot news or anything else, really. I don't think we've got much else coming up in the near future.
No, not that I'm aware of. There is just one note. Over on Twitter, I have been trying to get people to engage for our season finale episode, which will be coming up in 2 weeks' time, as unfortunately we're having a week off next week. If you do want to join in the debate, it's the same as we've done for the previous couple of seasons. We just want you to weigh in on what your favourite episodes were this season, just so we can talk about it and see if it matches what we thought.
Indeed.
I know it's summer and it's hot and people maybe aren't reading Twitter at the moment, but I'll keep retweeting those posts if you want to join in.
Well, to be fair to everyone, Elon has just made it so you can only read so many tweets per day, so...
Yeah, that might be part of the problem.
So I suppose without any other news, we can head straight off to episodes. And boy, do we have some episodes.
Yeah.
First up, we've got Avatar, directed by James Charlson. Story by David Duchovny and Howard Gordon. Teleplay by Howard Gordon. And first broadcast on the 26th of April, 1996. Guest stars Jennifer Hetrick, who played Sharon Skinner. She's been in Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, playing the same character, who's called Vash.
Like Vash the Stampede?
I imagine with the same name, but probably not much similar than that. But I'm curious now. She also showed up in Buffy and twice in Sliders as 2 completely different characters.
Okay.
We also have Malcolm Stewart, who plays Agent Bonakaze, who is in Moon and Jumanji and Series of Unfortunate Events, the TV version, or
okay.
Netflix one, as Mr. Remora, who I do not remember.
No, neither do I.
But he's also been in the X-Files twice previously and will turn up twice more.
Okay.
So he's been in 3 and in Pilot, and he'll show up in Terma and Tunguska in Season 4.
Okay.
So, Avatar. A century ago, young Avatar Aang, afraid of his new responsibilities, fled from his home and was forced into the ocean by a storm. He encased himself in his Sky Bison Appa in suspended animation in an iceberg near the South Pole. Shortly after, Fire Lord Sozin, the ruler of the Fire Nation, launched a world war to expand his nation's empire. Knowing that the Avatar must be an air nomad...
Nick, isn't this a different Avatar?
Maybe. It's a better Avatar. Oh, fine, okay.
And not the James Cameron one either.
In 2154... Fine. FBI Assistant Director Walter Skinner is given divorce papers from his wife Sharon after 17 years of marriage. Refusing to sign the papers, he meets an attractive woman at a bar named Karina Sales. The 2 engage in a one-night stand. However, when Skinner wakes the next morning after a nightmare of an old woman in bed with him, he finds Sales dead, her head twisted completely around. As the murder investigation unfolds, Skinner tells Mulder not to get involved. Skinner refuses to take a polygraph test and is viewed as a suspect. Scully examines Sales' corpse and finds a phosphorescent glow around her nose and lips. Mulder finds out that Sales was a sex worker and interviews her employer, who claims Skinner's credit card was used the previous night. Skinner once again sees the old woman in a red coat looking at him on City Street. However, when he pursues her, he instead finds Sharon wearing the same red coat. Mulder and Scully talk to Sharon, who says the marriage failed because of Skinner's emotional distance. Scully learns that Skinner has been receiving information for a sleep disorder and had dreams of being suffocated in bed by an old woman. Scully fears Skinner may have unwittingly killed Sales in his sleep. Mulder, however, believes that Skinner may be having visions of a succubus, a female demon with the mention of similar symptoms of people's bad dreams where they've experienced. Sharon visits Skinner at his home, but Skinner dismisses all her worries. After she leaves, Skinner falls asleep and again sees the old woman. He is awoken by detectives who tell him that Sharon has been run off the road and is severely injured. Skinner admits to Mulder that he saw the old woman during his out-of-body experience in Vietnam, but passed it off due to drugs. The cigarette smoking man is observing this conversation through a two-way mirror in the police station. Mulder investigates the airbag on Skinner's car, which is the one used to hit Sharon. Scully tries to defend Skinner to the Office of Professional Responsibility, but her statement does no good and Skinner is fired. Mulder believes that this was all done to awaken the X-Files. With the help of Agent Pendrell, Mulder is able to find a face imprint on the airbag, which is not Skinner's. He goes to see the sex worker's employer, but discovers that she too has been murdered. The agents hope to use Judy, the employee who saw Karina Sales hired, and use her to set up another meeting with the same man. They do this unaware that the assassin is nearby and watching them through the window of a cafe. Judy contacts the man and agrees to meet him in the Ambassador Hotel in an hour. Skinner goes to see Sharon at the hospital and tells her while she is unconscious why he could not sign the divorce papers. Sharon flatlines, but as Skinner is about to run for help, the old woman again takes the place of Sharon and beckons him closer. As Skinner enters the room again, he sees Sharon, now awakened from her coma, and she begins to tell him something. Mulder is taking out the hotel bar while Scully guards Judy in her hotel room. The assassin bursts into the room to attack them, but is shot by Skinner, who has unexpectedly arrived. The dead man's identity remains unknown. Skinner is rehired and cleared of all charges, but declines to tell Mulder how he knew to be at the hotel room. After Mulder leaves, Skinner puts his wedding ring back on.
Thank you.
You sure you don't want to talk about, The Last Airbender or James Cameron's Avatar?
Oh, I'd rather talk about either of them. Unfortunately, this is an X-Files rewatch podcast.
We could do a special. This is a very strange episode.
Yeah. Well, the motivation of this one apparently was just to give David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson a break by making a Skinner-centric episode. It's the first episode that hasn't really focused on Mulder and Scully, to be fair.
I can see that, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it has because they're not off-screen that much.
No.
It's kind of the Skinner show, but it's still also the Mulder and Scully show, so that didn't work out, it seems.
I also don't think we learn much about Skinner in the episode, as a Skinner-centric episode would infer that we were using this to kind of dive into his character a bit. But we don't learn much more than what Skinner already exposited in the likes of The Blessing way.
Yeah. Or even One Breath, I think.
Mm.
So, and also, yeah, you had this old woman experience while you were having your out-of-body experience in Vietnam, but didn't mention that previously, because that feels like it was kind of relevant to the weird supernatural stuff.
It's also a experience that he's continuously having, because he's kind of pegged it down as a sleep disorder, but he's been seeing this woman in the red coat since then.
Yeah, and it's really odd for it to come up again, given Skinner said, that was a weird thing that happened to me. I do not want to think about it any more than I have done. And yeah, I've had continuous visions of this old woman. This succubus.
I feel it's something we could have done interestingly, as this episode, I presume, would have been after Jacob's Ladder.
Way afterwards, yeah.
A movie which kind of delves into post-traumatic stress following Vietnam, and does so a lot better than this.
Well, a lot of things do things better than this one. I mean, didn't you find some note about Don't Look Now for this, which seems to have a superficial connection?
Yeah, it was one critic at the time kind of commented on the fact that this episode tries to be both a Monster of the Week episode and a conspiracy episode and kind of fails at both. Because you either want it to lean more to being the conspiracy. I mean, we get one little shot of the cigarette smoking man in this episode, but other than that, it isn't really a conspiracy episode.
No, and it's really odd that, okay, we're going to use this to discredit, we're going to use this to fire Skinner to make the X-Files more vulnerable. Because that's apparently the end game, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
But surely you would do this first and shoot Skinner when this didn't work.
Yeah. Discredit him first and then kill him and not the other way around.
It's really odd to do this now.
But then you've got your flip side of the coin with us a Monster of the Week episode, where it's particularly the scene where Skinner chases the woman in the red coat and finds Sharon, is a lot like Don't Look Now with Donald Sutherland chasing this kind of spectre in a red coat.
And then, yeah, not doing very well at the end of that.
Yeah.
I assume. I've never actually seen Don't Look Now, but I do know the twist.
I haven't. Well, I only know of the film because I wear a red raincoat and my dad keeps comparing me to it, so probably should see this at some point, as I don't get this as a flattering comparison.
As your dad would say, it's a bit rude.
A bit rude, is it?
Well,
that's good to know.
as a brief aside, Don't Look Now is infamous for two things. One of which is the bleak as hell. Well, three things. Sorry, the bleak as hell ending. The fact it starts with child death, and the sex scene in the middle where people remain unsure whether they will actually having sex in front of camera.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think anyone said one way or the other. Well, most people are going to come down on the whole, yes, it's all simulated, because in general, you don't do that. But apparently, in the 70s, it was all the rage because people were unable to accept that this was not genuine.
I see. But I understand that this is probably where the similarity ends in this episode, is you have Skinner chasing what he believes to be a spectre in a red coat.
True. We also got to see a sex scene, so we're going all out on the Don't Look Now
Yeah,
references,
I guess
apparently.
so.
It's... I don't know. I mean, I think Scully actually has the best the audience reaction in this episode of, Skinner was married? What?
Yeah, as far as I can tell from the credits, she never comes back either.
No. And she's never been referenced before. He hasn't apparently been wearing his wedding ring for years.
Even though they divorced 6 months ago. Or separated 6 months ago.
They're not even divorced. And yes, despite the fact that he doesn't sign the divorce papers and puts the wedding ring back on, she's not going to turn up in the series again unless she gets recast, but I'm pretty sure the character has also only got one appearance.
I've got to question the motivation of this succubus throughout the episode, if it is a succubus as well, because, well, we got, in mythology, a succubus is a sex demon, basically. There's that really famous sleep paralysis image of the little gremlin stood on someone's chest.
Yeah.
Is one of the explanations of reported succubus sightings is sleep paralysis. Because often you have the vivid waking dream where you see demons and you can't move or something like that. But a succubus in mythology is essentially a female demon that sleeps with men to steal their semen for their nefarious purposes. This succubus's MO throughout the episode is it saves his life in Vietnam.
Yep.
It scares him shitless for his entire adult life.
Yep.
It manages to get him fired from the FBI because at the very least it manages to implicate him in murder.
Yeah, I mean, she could wake him up when the hitman is twisting her head round. Actually, I don't know, ultimately, if that's a succubus or that's the hitman.
Or the succubus trying to warn him in that horror movie ghost way where you warn somebody by being as scary as possible.
I was going to say, this makes me think very much of William B. Davis featuring The Messengers, where the ghost apparently was trying to warn them about the farmhand the entire time, but was
through poltergeist activity.
Yeah, and also making it look like she was self-abusing herself.
And then its absolute final act before this succubus apparently disappears forever is it saves his wife's life.
Yeah.
By using his wife to also impart a message to save another woman's life.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So, I got to assume that that's the succubus out now, but why? Why has it done all this? I've always said it's not our place to kind of try and second-guess an alien life form, which this kind of is, but why?
Well, if you try and explain yourself to a cockroach...
I know. Those words come back to haunt me.
They do. I mean, I will sympathise in that, no, I don't know what it is. I mean, The Messengers is a terrible horror movie anyway, but it's one of the best examples I've got of the supernatural forces communicating in the most illogical and unhelpful way possible.
I guess the best I can think of is we don't know this is actually a succubus, it's just Mulder that puts that forward. And the title episode is Avatar, and Avatar in mythology is more like the kind of form a divine being takes to appear on Earth. So it's evidently some lesser god is looking out for Skinner or something like that. That this is the way that this small god is appearing to him to protect him.
Yeah.
But didn't do him much good when he was being beaten in that stairwell in a previous episode.
No, or against Mr. X, or when he was shot. The other thing, there's so much in this episode that gets me, it's when Mulder shows Scully the picture of the succubus, and Scully doesn't say, "What the hell are you talking about, Mulder? This is nonsense. I'm leaving now." But he sees the unearthly glow from the succubus on top of the guy, in this case of, oh, that makes me think of the phosphorescence I found on the lips and mouth of the sex worker. And Scully, what's happened to you? This is not your usual methods.
It's that phosphorescence that degrades to nothing as well.
Yeah, which I don't think phosphorescence does.
When they come to test it, they just say there's nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to your point about Monster of the Week and Conspiracy simultaneously, because it would have been so much more logical if Succubus had been the one driving the car. Like, you found the imprint of the woman's face on the airbag.
I've got to admit, I kind of thought that's what it was, but you informed me after we watched the episode that it was actually supposed to be the hitman.
Yeah, no, it's because they show it to Judy, and she identifies who he is.
Oh, yeah, you're right, absolutely. But in my head, I thought it was the succubus driving the car, and that made me even more confused as to why it kind of brutally injures Skinner's wife to be able to impart this message.
Yeah, well, we've still got, as far as we can tell, because unless the X-Files is going to subscribe to the overly powered hitman who can twist someone's head right the way around, that has to be... Wait, hang on. I feel we've missed out on a central premise of the entire episode. Human person cannot twist someone's head all the way around.
I bet the mountain could do it.
Yes, but he's in the fantasy universe, but in the real world, finding that dead body next to Skinner, they'd be saying, okay, he can't have done it. He doesn't have that strength.
I'm pretty sure in the episode it said there was no signs of a struggle as well.
Yeah.
You think that if someone was trying to twist your head all the way around, you'd put up a fight.
Yeah, but then that implies the succubus who's looking out for Skinner. So, okay, hang on then. Basically, the succubus is saying, no, Skinner, you must go back to your wife. You can sleep with Karina Casales, but then she must die, so you go back to your wife.
It's kind of odd behaviour for a sex demon, though, where you'd think that it wants Skinner, so therefore wouldn't have let him be happily married for years because it wants him.
Well, I think we're going to have to go with it's not actually a succubus and Mulder has the right region but the wrong creature.
We're thinking it's some kind of small god instead.
Yeah, because if it was a succubus, as you say, it would not have allowed the marriage to be 17 years long.
Mm.
I think it's got thoroughly confused because it's trying to do both things, and I can't help but notice that Howard Gordon's name is on this. As much as it's also got David Duchovny's name on it. Though, Duchovny, I've got to say, what were you thinking with this one?
Apparently, Duchovny did have a lot of love for this episode and a lot of involvement because he thought that Skinner deserved an episode.
I absolutely agree with that, just not this episode.
It's the nexus of Skinner as well, because according to Vince Gilligan, apparently Skinner was originally supposed to be a villain for the series, but he kind of developed him into more of a kind of anti-hero and then an ally for them, and he became so popular with fans that he became a proper good guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, this episode is still baffling.
Yeah.
I mean, we know there are other Skinner-centric episodes coming up, and they run a huge gamut of quality.
What are you counting my favourite one at?
Depends which one you actually mean is your favourite one.
Nanomachines?
I was going to put that on the lesser side of the scale.
Oh, I like that one.
We'll get to that one when we get to that one.
Season 6, I think.
Yeah, we got a lot to go on that one. I did know a really weird thing in this episode, and I can see it being just me trying to make connections. But when Skinner goes to the bar after refusing to sign his divorce papers, it's kind of odd given they're pressuring him and he's running out of time in the day, and he just says, no, we're going to do it tomorrow. He goes to the bar and meets Karina. The barman who serves him looks a lot like Eldon Tyrell in Blade Runner.
Yeah, I can see it.
But where I'm going with this is he played the barman in The Shining.
Of course he did, yeah.
I'm wondering if that's an intentional nod.
It could
a very complicated nod, but it feels like that's kind of trying to set up... I mean, if you go with that, then that would be trying to set up a Jack Torrance kind of thing for Skinner that then ultimately falls apart very quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. The thing it made me think of most was Twin Peaks, that whole sequence.
I can see that.
I thought it was a very ethereal, Twin Peaks-esque, slightly surreal sequence with Karina approaching him in the bar.
Yeah. And didn't she sort of make out that she was being threatened by someone as well, which we could then infer is this guy who's hired her, but...
It's not so much threatened as she's being kind of harassed or flirted with by someone she's not interested in.
Yeah.
And therefore has latched onto another big, strong, strapping man at the bar to protect her.
The complexities of the episode are so weird, though. It's like the fake usage of Skinner's credit card. I mean, it's not actually clear if that was Skinner's credit card that was charged or someone just had a card in his name or something.
That one glimpse of the cancer man kind of ties this whole into the syndicate, so they've got power. It could be that they've just fixed this in some way.
Yeah, I mean, we do have to have work. Cancer man, though, has run out of his regular assassins, so he's got this other guy in who doesn't even last an episode. That's how bad this guy is.
Cancer Man didn't know he was going up against the supernatural, though.
He should do, though, because I'm going to refer back to Tombs with Do You Believe Them? Of course I do. He knows what's going on in the universe.
So there's always a chance that somebody can have some minor deity attached to them.
Exactly.
I'm really not sure about the choice of sex workers for this plot as well. Is X-Files, in the likes of Too Shy and Irresistible for that matter, taken potshots at sex workers because they're vulnerable women?
Yes.
And we've kind of gone down that again. There's no disparagement about sex workers here, it's you do you. But at the same time, it's the whole, I think X-Files writers have latched onto this profession that makes women vulnerable and targeted them that way.
Yeah, and also it's the secrets thing, because there's that comment of you wouldn't believe who half my clients were. This inference of the rich and the powerful are deeply entwined with this.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the comment in Arrested Development with the idea that people are vulnerable with sex workers and they divulge things they really shouldn't. Though at the same time, I just... Is there no one else we can use for this? Is there any other occupation we can start targeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem ultimately is it wouldn't be that hard to take the sex workers out of it, because Karina approaching Skinner at the bar can be literally someone who's taken a fancy to Skinner and seen him in the bar.
It doesn't even have to be a woman. You could have Skinner going out drinking and waking up with a dead man next to him.
That's true.
Or something like that. You don't have to have these sex workers. It's only really to give a profession so that you can have another person who can identify it easier because it's a co-worker.
True.
But it could have been another person at the bar or anything.
It could have. I think the logic would be they wanted the Skinner sex scene.
Mm.
They also wanted something that they're banking on the initial reaction, and certainly very much the 90s initial reaction would be you'd judge Skinner for using a sex worker in the 90s. It would be, this is kind of the whole, this is how far he's fallen, that he's gone for this.
I think a lot of people would still judge him today, to be honest, though we are, in our more enlightened times, a bit more open-minded about this sort of thing.
But in the 90s, it would be very much a case of Skinner has fallen hard, and that's why he's done this. That he's, deliberately hired someone. And then, you've got the preemptive judgment. The audience knows that's not true, so it's kind of trying to have it both ways.
I just dislike the just targeting women for no purpose, though.
Oh.
I mean, Karina barely speaks in the episode. She exists to be a woman in refrigerators for Skinner.
Yep.
You have this woman who's introduced just to be murdered in the opening kill, that we basically learn nothing more about her beyond the fact she's a sex worker over the course of the episode.
Yeah, that's about all we do know.
It's defined by the fact she's a prostitute.
Well, I think the other thing then is, in these kind of situations, you could normally involve a friend or a roommate. But as you said, we've strictly got co-workers on this, so she doesn't even have outside relationships.
It's not like some of the other episodes that handle women better. I know I don't like the sex workers being targeted in Too Shy either, but at the same time, you've got the main female protagonist in Too Shy and the roommate who's worried about her, or the friend who's worried about her, whatever it is you've got a connection between two females there that is more than just colleagues.
Yeah. Whereas this is simply, we both worked for the same place, which is really high class and expensive. At least implied to be very, very high class and expensive.
And you also get the targeting of other women because her boss is murdered in the course of the episode too.
Yeah, after, 4 lines of dialogue, and then she's just dead next time we go to talk to her.
And they're only just stopped from taking out the last one because of divine intervention.
Yeah. Which Skinner refuses to explain. So, no, sir, you're not the director of the FBI at this point. You're going to have to explain how you burst into this hotel room and shot this man.
Oh, well, it makes perfect sense. My wife just burst out of her possibly permanent coma to tell me about this happening so I could rush over there.
Yeah, what did the succubus tell him? Does Sharon remember this? I don't think we find that out. She doesn't show up on screen again.
No, you don't see Sharon again. And based on the cast list, you never see Sharon again.
No, so Sharon's side of this feels like it would be kind of vital, but no, we don't get that.
Again, it's women in refrigerators, though, we put Karen in to facilitate Skinner's plot. She's served her really weird purpose, and now she's back in the refrigerator.
Indeed. and Skinner's marriage will never come up again.
It's a really bad episode for female characters.
I don't think it's a great episode for Skinner. I mean, again, he gets some moments to do acting, but at the same time, I could swear he's barely on screen more than others. I mean, I think the scene at his house and the hospital are like the only scenes that feel Skinner-centric and the ones that feel out of place if this was a normal episode.
I think the best scene for him is that one where he talks to Sharon. The actual one in the house where he gets to have a full conversation with Sharon is his best moment in the whole episode. And it's a really good character moment for him as well, which would have more bearing if Sharon ever came back.
Yeah, but it barely feels like it's more than you normally get of Skinner in a normal episode. He's only just getting slightly more to do than Mulder and Scully this time.
We also don't really follow up much on his sleep disorder, which apparently he's been going to a sleep clinic to treat for some time.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be good to know if that now has resolved and the succubus is. We keep calling her succubus. We don't know she's a succubus. Whatever.
The Avatar.
The Avatar, yeah. If the Avatar has stopped appearing to him, or it's been encased in an iceberg in the ocean.
I'm kind of thinking of it in terms of the Netflix series of The Haunting of Hill House. There's this spirit that appears to her throughout that is to warn her of a certain event that's going to happen. And we've got a similar idea with the succubus here is it's now departed the warning, it was there to protect this girl.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, because it's got no connection to her. And now it's gone, because it's done what it needed to do. It saved Skinner's life, essentially, by saving his reputation. And it saved this girl, so now it's off back into the ether. But the sleep disorder, there is an interesting real-world study in France where a detective was accused of murdering somebody while sleepwalking.
Okay.
And it's a fascinating case if you find it. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the person. It was kind of a Victorian-era case where a detective was brought on to solve a case where a man was mysteriously shot on a beach. And he discovered through investigating it that actually he was the only one who could have possibly done it. And they ruled it out in the end of the fact that because he had no memories of it and no connection to this man, it must have been an episode where he was sleepwalking, encountered this man, drew his gun and shot him. But that's your real-world kind of example of where something like this has been recorded happening. And the similar idea would be Skinner in this one, who has seen this thing that's terrified in his sleep and broken its neck, apparently twisting its head all the way round in his sleep.
Again,
and it's turned out to be, all a dream, a sleepwalking incident, and he's killed an innocent woman.
And again, you just can't do that with your bare hands.
Cannot see any situation where you could have done this unless he'd shoved her down a flight of stairs in her sleep and she'd broken her neck or something like that.
Yeah.
It'd have to be some force. And you see in the chalk outline that it legitimately has her nose is facing the opposite way to her chest.
Exactly. It's very much like the joke in Spaceballs.
Worryingly so.
Yeah.
I feel it would have worked better I'm spoiling the House on the Haunted Hill, of the effect of the fact that you might not have realised who the old woman is at first, but Skinner recognises her at the 11th hour. You realise that you are there to save that woman or something like that.
Yeah.
When you finally do see her in the flesh.
Yes. I mean, then you lose the old woman aspect, but if you'd had Judy straddling him the entire time, visions of her...
You might have done something so you didn't immediately recognise it, and Skinner realised at the last that Judy was the one he had to save. That's why it's appearing in this form for him.
Yeah, that would have been better. I mean, had they done that, and there's an element of it anyway the episode does not deal with, is that's got some precognition and predestination stuff tied into it, which that's something that the X-Files should really have to handle. The fact that, you've just said the future's predictable or set in stone. That's got some implications for you going forward, hasn't it?
Quite.
But no, we're not going to do that. I'm also... it's one of... Given the horror stories you get of the American justice system at times, the fact that Skinner... You've got this Judy, presumably just a testimony to say, Skinner did not kill that woman. Presumably it's the hitman, who we do have no record of, we don't know who he is, but we can prove he was driving Skinner's car at the time. The whole overturning the charges against him and reinstating him feels that the FBI could kind of say, nah, you were still implicated in a sex worker-related thing, you're not getting your job back, you're still fired. It's very TV. We need to return status quo as hard as possible.
And you wouldn't have the likes of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky where this is career death.
Yeah, and
this has tarnished your reputation forever.
It's never
this
gone
is
away.
The thing that people will remember when they hear your name.
Exactly, and I can just imagine life being a bit awkward for Skinner with the other assistant directors sneering at him or something.
It's the kind of thing where you might be reinstated, but you would step down.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to keep up with this, but we're trapped in a TV notion where we have to reset back to where we were, and ultimately as well, though, for that whole we're trying to be conspiracy and monster of the week, is we haven't advanced the conspiracy at all, because all we've got is, so we tried to shoot Skinner, didn't work, right, so we're trying to discredit him, that hasn't worked, we're just gonna not kill him or do anything to Skinner.
I guess Skinner has plot armor now, off we go, boys.
Yeah, again, I just can't get past you tried to shoot him, surely you destroy his reputation first, and then kill him when that failed to work.
No, killing him feels easier, to be honest. Could we not get him hit by a bus on the way to work, and these guys can slam into his wife in a car, they can't just run Skinner over while he's out on a jog or something like that.
Well, the other thing about it is, discrediting Skinner like this is, okay, so they separated 8 months ago, and if they want to discredit Skinner, surely...
Why now?
Why now? I mean, Piper Maru was the excuse for why they did it then. And that's fine, but we haven't had a conspiracy episode since Apocrypha, have we?
Yeah, I think Apocrypha would be the last one, if we're not counting Jose Chung.
If we're going to count Jose Chung, which I can imagine, I kind of wish that the Cigarette spoke about it as a cameo in the episode just to really sort of throw everything, but can you imagine what is the impetus to suddenly destroy Skinner's career? Because chronologically then, yeah, the last case was Jose Chung, so was the release of From Outer Space too much for the Syndicate? This case, oh my god, how did this get out? Quick, shoot Skinner now. That didn't work last time. Fine, discredit him. Hire a sex worker, make sure that Skinner sleeps with her. And there's the other part of the stupid problem, is, unless that credit card thing was faked, they've just hired a sex worker and said, go and shoot Skinner. And at no point do they have a backup plan for Skinner says, no, not in the mood today. I was going to get drunk at the bar or something. Because, yeah, what are they going to do if he turns it down? I know that there's the obvious cultural assumption that the man is never going to do that, but I'm sure in real life that people do say, I'm not in the mood right now. What's the plan for that? Are they going to shoot Skinner now?
Or he's just going to wake up with this woman next to him anyway.
Ah, what the hell? It's like, what happened, sir? Why'd you buy a hotel room? I don't know either. I went home last night.
We have the mind-altering alien drugs, why not?
Well, yeah.
This feels like a good application for them, making Skinner remember that he murdered someone.
So why are we... This is just a complete mess. Do you have anything else for this one?
No, I'm really stretching, to be honest, on this one. It's, I don't hate this episode to the degree I hate some of the other ones, like 3. But, at the same time, I just think it's forgettable. I watched this episode about 4 days ago, and it's just faded into the background.
Yeah. You remember bits and pieces, but the overall whole is just... Yeah.
I remember some of the ones that we've rewatched, which I haven't seen for a decade, I remember really clearly even now, like your Clyde Brookmans, your Jose Chungs. This one I could remember the old woman in the red coat, and that was all I could remember about the episode.
Yeah, and you'd think that something like Jose Chung, with its absolutely absurd, confusing sequences, would be the hard one to keep track of.
But no, before we saw that one, I still remembered it vividly.
Yeah. And this one is, there's a start and there's an end and there's a morass in the middle where stuff happens.
Yeah. That's the best way to describe it, I think. Yeah, sorry if Avatar has fans. I don't know. I will know if you answer my tweets and let me know what your favourite episodes are of the season. But this one just flopped for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even see it as good for Skinner fans because, yeah, you get a bit, but I think you probably got more out of one breath ultimately for Skinner than this one.
Yeah, very true.
Well, if we should move along to something quite different. Quagmire. Directed by Kim Manners, written by Kim Newton. There's an asterisk next to that, though we'll get to that in a bit. broadcast on the 3rd of May 1996. Guest stars: Chris Ellis plays Sheriff Lance Hint, who was in Days of Thunder, My Cousin Vinny, Apollo 13, Bean, the Mr. Bean film,
Oh.
Godzilla, Armageddon, Transformers, Live Free or Die Hard, which I think is the 4th one? Or is that the 5th one? I think it's 4th.
There's only 2 Die Hard movies, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I would say there's only 2 Die Hard films, but unfortunately they're different 2 Die Hard films to your one. The Dark Knight Rises, he will show up in Millennium. He's in Veronica Mars, and he's in The Office, where he played former Congressman Chris O'Keefe.
Okay, yeah.
We also have Timothy Webber as Dr. Paul Faraday, who was previously in The X-Files in Tombs and Our Town.
Yes, I've got him in Our Town.
Yeah.
I didn't realise he was in Tombs as well.
He might have had his glasses on or something.
I thought I recognised him when we saw the episode.
But he'll also show up in Millennium, and he'll show up in The Lone Gunman.
Okay.
And he was also in Netflix's series of Unfortunate Events.
All right.
But would you like to give us a synopsis of Quagmire?
Our episode this time takes place in Milliken, Georgia. We open on 2 biologists, Paul Faraday and William Bailey, discussing the decreasing frog population in the lake. Bailey gets up to look for his missing pager and ends up getting dragged into the lake and killed by some unseen monster. Mulder and Scully drive down to Georgia to investigate this disappearance. Scully is also forced to bring her little dog, Queequeg, with her due to the short notice. Mulder tells Scully that Bailey's isn't the first disappearance. A Boy Scout troop leader also disappeared when he was taking a pee near the lake. Scully is not sure why this is an X-File, but Mulder quickly reveals that a plesiosaur-like cryptid called Big Blue may be responsible, as it is a local legendary sighting in the area. The 2 agents both talk to Dr. Faraday and visit a local bait shop. They discover that the locals have varying degrees of belief in the creature. The owner of the tackle shop in particular is very much a believer in Big Blue because he sells a lot of merchandise to tourists about the creature. Shortly afterwards, a fisherman manages to dredge up the half-eating body of the Boy Scout leader. That evening, we as the viewers see that the tackle shop owner is actually falsifying evidence of Big Blue. He's traipsing through the mud around the swamp wearing big fake dinosaur feet to make tracks. He is attacked and killed by something off-screen. Despite the fact that they find evidence of Big Blue being falsified, the fact that there have been murders causes Mulder to want to close off the lake. In Jaws fashion, the local sheriff declines, saying he does not have enough men to cover 48 miles of shoreline. Meanwhile, we see 2 teenagers, Stoner and Chick. We previously met them in War of the Coprophages, heading to the lake to lick toads in order to get high. Their friend, a diver who is procuring these toads for them, is suddenly attacked underwater, and they watch as his severed head floats to the surface. Scully is skeptical about Big Blue being the killer and believes that this teenager might have just been killed by a boat propeller. Meanwhile, a photographer named Ansel, who is determined to catch the first real evidence of Big Blue, is also attacked just as he frantically tries to take pictures of the creature. None of these pictures come out clearly, though Mulder believes that one of them may show a tooth. While investigating this, the sheriff falls into the lake and feels something large move past him in the water. He finally orders the lake to be closed off the back of this. Later that night, Mulder is examining Ansel's photographs further when Scully takes Queequeg out for a walk. The dog senses something in the nearby woods and runs off. We hear its frantic yelping cut out off screen. As Scully reels in its shredded collar, she realises that poor Queequeg has become the latest victim of the creature. Although Scully is somewhat shocked and saddened by her pet's death, Mulder is surprisingly unsympathetic and realises that Big Blue sightings have been moving closer and closer to shore. Mulder and Scully rent a boat and head out onto the lake in search of Big Blue. However, their boat is struck by something and sinks. The 2 of them manage to scramble out onto a large rock and sit on it and talk in the dark for a while, discussing Mulder's quest to catch Big Blue, with Scully likening him to Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. As Dr. Faraday eventually walks past, the 2 of them realise they were very close to shore the entire time and just unable to see it in the dark. As they talk with Faraday, Mulder realises that the drop in frog supply, which might have been Big Blue's native food source, has caused it to move closer to shore and seek out alternate food sources, i.e. humans. Faraday is attacked but manages to make it out alive. Mulder chases the attacker into the woods and fires at it, revealing as he kills it for it to be a giant alligator. Mulder is really disappointed that the killer has ended up being an alligator and not Big Blue himself. As the two agents leave, however, the viewer sees a plesiosaur, evidently Big Blue, swimming past behind them in the lake unnoticed.
Thank you. There's actually weirdly a few elephants in the room for this one. One of which is 3 years later, a film involving a giant crocodile in the lake would come out and spawn something like 6 sequels.
Lake Placid, it's a great film.
It is, but I mean, there's no comment on the Wikipedia page of did they watch an episode of this TV show and say that's what we're going to do.
I'd like to question as well as I don't know much about America, but I do know that Georgia is right next to Florida, a state where, when I stayed there once as a kid, an official told me that everywhere there is a body of water, there are gators, is why we wouldn't think that gator attacks were a possibility to begin with.
It is a bit odd, and also it's the dreariest, greyest, coldest state adjacent to Florida I think I've ever seen.
I don't really know the climates in America, but I'd assume that if you're just north of Florida, which is kind of tropical,
yeah,
you'd be pretty warm.
Well, given when we went to New York, how warm it was then, and Georgia is somewhere further down than that.
Oh, way further down that coast.
So that's going to be a lot warmer.
I think the temperature changes are more extreme in New York than the southern states. I know I've been to Florida in both summer and winter, and by our English standards, it's pretty hot in both of those.
Yeah. So it's one of these, yeah, I can see why you're struggling with this, given you've got to film in Vancouver, but that doesn't look much like Florida at all.
Georgia.
Sorry, Georgia even. The other thing is the asterisk I put on the writer is that while the episode is credited to Kim Newton, this is infamously Darren Morgan's actual last episode for the foreseeable.
I think he heavily rewrote the script for this one.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard not to say it shows that it's been pulled between two extremes. It's neither got the humorous bizarreness of his best ones, but nor is it the monster fest it clearly wants to be. It's been pulled in between two poles, and I don't think it works as either.
We absolutely can't afford to show monster attacks as well, because every attack until Mulder shoots the gator is just something grabbing people by the legs and yanking them off screen.
Yeah. And I don't know, you can completely see how Lake Placid came about because of it, because it's a better melding of the two extremes it's operating under. But as the first instance of it, it doesn't know what it wants to be.
You've also got Lake Placid, though, that is like a dinosaur-sized gator. It's much bigger than an alligator would get. Whereas the gator at the end of this one is a very big gator, but it's not supernatural in any way. It's just a large alligator.
Oh, yeah. And it's weird, though, you're missing some of the black humor that Lake Placid actually has, like, is it Betty White who's pushing whole cows into the lake?
Oh, to feed her babies.
Well, she feeds the big one, and then she's feeding the little ones at the end of the film. Before the sequels just became, nude flicks, basically.
The sequels are
just trash.
Piranha-level trash, but the original is really good.
I think the original one was one of the Ally McBeal writers had something to do with it. Sort of a very weird pedigree.
Really?
Yeah. But, yeah, it's hard not to look at Quagmire and say, oh, well, you inspired a film series later on that was possibly should have been left dead at the end of the first one.
I'd go as far to say definitely should have been left dead at the end of the first one.
I think the other weird thing then in this episode, and you did hit on it in the synopsis, is while we've seen that different writers handle the Mulder and Scully relationship in vastly different ways and sometimes pull them out of character quite dramatically, this is one of Mulder's one of his worst moments, and I know I keep saying that, but this one's truly lack of empathy.
Oh, Queequeg's death.
Queequeg's death. Scully has just lost her dog, the dog she got from Clyde Bruckman, a case that profoundly affected her in the aftermath. And now we don't care about that, we're just going to get on a boat and go hunting for a plesiosaur.
One of his first words is, "Hey Scully, can you drive a boat?" afterwards.
Mulder. But then it's when they're on the rock as well, I feel that's Darren Morgan coming in with just Scully's increasing exasperation with what Mulder is saying.
Just want to talk before we get to the rock about the unbalance in the episode is that scene in the rock is clearly what we've been built around. That's like a quarter of the film, a quarter of the episode is them sat on this rock talking, and it is kind of deep and profound conversation. Apparently it was 10 pages of script,
Yeah.
this sequence. But it feels like the first half of the episode is really rushed to get to it.
Yeah.
You have a lot of deaths, or a lot of people being dragged off screen into the water, really, really close together to cram them in before this scene. So the first half of the episode is really kind of exciting, and then it just kind of slows to this lengthy introspective bit.
Yeah, and I was just going to say...
Did you want to discuss the bit on the rock? Sorry,
Well,
I got you off your tangent.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say we'll go back to the early parts as well, but touch on the rock with the exasperation part. I know there's a humbug level air to some of the rest of it, like the bait shop guy selling the merch.
And making the dinosaur tracks in the mud.
Yeah, and then the fact that to any professional investigator, they dismiss it immediately with the whole, it's not deep enough for a creature of that size to have caused these tracks. It's clearly fake.
You're also going on the basis of they're supposing it's a plesiosaur, so it wouldn't be leaving these big three-toed footprints.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, it's hard not to... The episode is sympathetic to Mulder to a point in weird ways, because it's the Stoner and Chick scene, which is it's sort of a big surprise to see them actually come back as other characters. I mean, we knew they were coming back, but yeah, so Stoner and Chick's relationship has shifted somewhere along the line, because I didn't get the impression she knew him very well at all originally. But presumably they've been forged into a friendship by the death of the guy.
In the cockroach episode.
Yeah. And now we've got a new third person who immediately dies, which seems to be the running gag now, of whoever the guy in the diving
I do quite like that oddly comedic scene where he's trying to get high licking a toad as well. It's like, are you sure that's really a toad?
Yep, just gonna do that one. But then they try to pass off that his death could be something else, and they go for it's the prop of a speedboat.
Yeah.
As much as they dismiss Stoner and Chick as witnesses because God knows what they've been smoking or taking
Licking.
or whatever, yeah. We, the audience, see that no speedboat went past. I mean, this isn't like, to use your favourite anime, another, where someone does die because of a speedboat.
Yes, and it's traumatic.
It's traumatic.
But there are speedboats in the water at the time.
There are speedboats in the water, and they're going near to where the person is. It's not this one where he dives under the water, thrushes around a bit, and then his decapitated head bobs up out the water.
It's those rare speedboats that go underwater in narrow lakes, apparently.
It's just frustrating, because, I mean, the X-Files has done this before, but usually when they give you the explanation, it's not, but that's not what we saw.
Does America even have speedboat ordinances, would be the other question. I know I grew up in the Lake District in Cumbria, our county that is basically 99% lake, but there are like rules about when you can drive on lakes, where you can, how fast you can go, all these laws linked to it that make like speedboat accidents really unlikely.
You'd like to think so, but I wouldn't want to guess what George was like, or George was allegedly like. And yeah, we've got the obvious Jaws analogue with we can't shut down the lake, not in the middle of tourist season. Although it's actually more, we just don't have the manpower.
It's a bit more of a realistic reason than Jaws' practicality, not the it's Amity.
It's
Amity. What was it? It was like 4th of July festivals in Amity Lake, or it can't be a lake in Jaws, in Amity Town.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not Amityville, but it's...
Yeah, I almost said Amityville. It's not that. Yeah.
Oh, there's a crossover for Amityville and Jaws.
Amityville Shark?
Amityville Shark. It's the kind of thing where I wouldn't like to say that hasn't been done, given... Oh, no. Oh, that was it. Yeah, sorry. This is a complete tangent, but Amityville Island, the poster is a shark.
Oh, there you go. Amityville Shark.
You've watched Amityville Island.
I have watched Amityville
It's got nothing to do with sharks.
I've watched 25 Amityville sequels, I will have you know.
I know. They were incredibly hard to get after a while.
That was a mistake last Halloween.
That was a mistake. We'll get to the rock. Because as you said, the rest of the episode is basically just a rush to get there. I mean, I do like the photographer with his quest to take the first picture of Big Blue, and the fact that when the creature's actually rushing him, he's fumbling and got the lens cap on and everything else. At the same time...
You get your traditional blurry pictures of the Nessie.
Yeah, and, this could be a tooth and everything. And it also feels frustrating that Mulder's on a monster chase that he's dragged Scully out of bed on a Saturday morning for. Because this is one of those other weird ones where, what is your authority ultimately, Mulder? Given, yes, you are an FBI agent, But this is a weekend, as far as we can tell, where you're meant to be not at work.
And also, it's not even close. It's not that he's dragged her to some local mystery.
No.
He's dragged her halfway across America for this.
They've flown under Georgia, and is the FBI paying for this flight, or are they paying for the flight? How much money are they earning?
They evidently pay a lot for the X-Files.
Well, yeah. Somehow. And it's a frustrating episode to talk about, because, again, I think the problem is that Lake Placid ultimately is the episode executed much better. Twice as long, but much better.
I think on the flip side, it's technically a comedy episode of the X-Files again, but we've seen that they can do so much better.
Yeah.
Humbug, Clyde Bruckman, Jose Chung are all way more entertaining than this episode.
Yeah, even De Handa De Villette is more entertaining.
Yeah, and that's not even meant to be a comedy episode.
Or not as an outright comedy episode. I don't think it was intended to be entirely straight.
Mm. But
this one feels... I mean, there's not a lot of notes on exactly what went wrong with the original script, but it feels very much like... I don't know, did they run out of plot at about the 3/4 mark and had no idea how to fill in the last part? And that's where the rock scene has come from, as a way to pad out the rest of it.
I feel more like the rock scene was always intended, because there is so much focus, and it's an episode that really will appeal to Mulder and Scully shippers, I think, because of that sequence on the rock.
I'd argue it both ways, because I can see the pro-ship one, and I can also see the anti-ship one, given Scully's initial exasperation with Mulder makes it feel like this is an impossibility.
I think I would have shoved him off the rock, to be honest.
Well, exactly. It's a case of Mulder, it's also to make Mulder correspond to Ahab more precisely than he does normally. But Scully makes the explicit comparison.
I think, although Mulder refutes it, is Scully's on the nose. Mulder is an Ahab character.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned by the fact that apparently Scully's dad considers Moby Dick an appropriate bedtime read for children, because I have read Moby Dick, and I think that's probably a form of child abuse.
He probably abridges the boring parts and gets straight onto the exciting parts.
Or the violent parts, or the bits about whale foreskins and stuff like that.
Again, this is the part I imagine he's going to sort of leave out in his reading of a child. It's odd that it's taken us this far to learn the dog's name was Queequeg.
Up to its death.
Up to his death. And the fact that, yeah, it seems that just no one it's odd that no one wanted to engage with Queequeg as an aspect of Scully's life at all.
You have a weird bit. You have to explain Queequeg to the audience, because, of course, there are 8 people in the world who have read Moby Dick.
Yeah.
But the fact that Mulder doesn't know who Queequeg is, but then kind of waxes on about the characterization of Ahab, showing that he's familiar and even quotes Moby Dick, but didn't know who Queequeg was.
Yeah, that's very...
like the first major character that Ishmael kind of encounters over the course of the story.
That is a bit of a problem. A very weird inconsistency there. In terms of other mysteries as well, though, we are going to have to assume that the only reason they're on that rock is because the gator slammed into them?
Or they hit the rock itself.
But the way the sonar is depicted is an object approaching them at high speed from behind.
It did look like they were slammed by the gator. I don't think a gator would smash through a boat like that. But at the same time, they are literally 5 feet from the shore. In one, I'm going to say, how the hell did that boat sink there?
Yeah.
When they can wade to shore from where they are. And 2 is that the boat going into that shallower water could have easily scraped up against anything.
Yeah, and so Scully, when you said you could drive a boat, are you actually saying that no, you can't, and have no idea what you're doing?
To be fair, Scully's head wasn't in the game. Her dog had just been eaten.
Well, no, that's fair, but it's also, why does Scully know how to drive a boat? This is like never before mentioned details about Scully's life.
Because her dad was in the Navy?
Uh-huh, okay.
Inherited skill?
Sure, why not? We don't know what her dad actually did.
We do see that Scully was quite tomboyish as a kid. Maybe this is just some skill she's picked up in these kind of things that she's done with the lads.
True. But it feels like it's all done, it's too much done in favour of the gag, ultimately, to show, they are literally, 5 metres from shoreline or something, rather than anything realistic. I mean, the best I've got is that Loch Ness is infamous for being a very steep lake. As in, it drops off incredibly fast when you get past shallows, but I would be surprised if that lake had the same
I know
issue.
in America some of the Great Lakes, like Lake Champlain, are way unimaginably deep when you think in our terms of what we've experienced in the UK.
Yeah.
Is these are like ocean depth lakes. But I don't know what this fictional lake in Georgia is supposed to be like. It doesn't look that wide.
No, plus you'd think that would make the lake very cold, so people would be reluctant to swim in it.
He says they've got 48 miles of, or kilometres of shoreline, which I think would put it close to like Lake Windermere in the UK.
Yeah.
Which is, it's deep, but it's not
That
unfathomably deep.
And again, sorry, I just remembered Mulder not doing himself any favours by talking about the idea that in Loch Ness, Nessie doesn't actually live in the lake, it lives in the cliffs around the lake.
I don't think he's seen Loch Ness.
No, I don't think he has seen Loch Ness. Though, to be fair to him, that is a thing that some of the monster hunters do kind of postulate.
One of the popular ones with Nessie and Loch Ness is that there might be some way it can get out to sea, like subterranean tunnels or something like that. So it's not the fact that it is one landlocked monster, it's like there might be a colony of them and they can get in and out of the lake.
Yeah, although a lot of, unfortunately, it's one of those things where science butts up against it. A lot of people pointed out of why you would have found that by now. Also, why it wants to swim through the miles of tunnels, given Loch Ness isn't that close to the sea.
I think it's the fact as well, the fact that every large body of water has a sea monster. In the Lake District, we've got Bo Nessie, who supposedly lives in Lake Windermere.
I think Mulder's best one it was the tiger shark or something it mentions.
Bull shark.
Bull shark, yeah, was pulled out of a lake. And that's just an aberration, which is an interesting one. Or coelacanth are probably a good one for him, but that's an interesting different reason why they were rediscovered.
They were also in the ocean, which is vast.
Yes, vast and full of life. But it doesn't do much good. But then ultimately, frustratingly, Mulder is once again proved right at the end because, they do have a plesiosaur in that lake. And an alligator.
They lived harmoniously, apparently.
On frogs. Do alligators eat frogs?
I doubt an alligator... Well, an alligator probably eat anything, but I think one that size would go for things bigger than a frog. It can't sustain itself on frogs. Look at the size of it.
Well, yeah, but then the plesiosaur is also pretty big.
There's also the anecdotal thing they mentioned earlier about something taking a cow.
Yeah.
So either that gator or that plesiosaur has dragged a cow into the water at some point.
Which I imagine must be the gator. And again...
But I don't think a gator, even a gator that size, it's, maybe about a 12 or 14 footer. It's not going to drag a cow into the lake.
No. And again, that feels like this is... The Lake Placid writers were just taking note and saying, okay, we have the scene with the cow.
Again, the one in Lake Placid is about 20 foot worth of alligator. It's bigger than any alligator would get.
I mean, it's the strange thing where I would not have been surprised if it turned out the writer of this episode went on to make Lake Placid. But the fact there seems to be no connection whatsoever is just absolutely mind-boggling.
It might just be one of those things. There was a slew of monster movies around that time when you got things like Anaconda as well.
Yeah, but it's the 3-year gap, so it's the whole, this isn't out of the blue. This is enough time for someone to have made the notes and then submitted the script and got it made.
You know what? I could do this better.
Yeah. And I think by the time... No, we'd have seen it just before Lake Placid, but I think it was one, certainly as soon as Lake Placid got announced, it's case wait, this is an X-Files episode. I've seen this one.
Mm.
But this isn't Final Destination, which is a modified script. So... I don't really have anything to go with that. I don't understand why Dr. Faraday gets away at the end, given that no one else has ever survived a tangle with the gator.
Mm.
But then also, he didn't see what it was.
It was dark.
It is dark, but...
They have illustrated the fact that it is literally pitch black as well.
Yeah. So Mulder can see those trees crashing down as the gator comes at him really easily. Poor gator, though.
Yeah, I know. I like gators.
I know.
They're big and... I almost said harmless, but they're big and if you leave them alone, they leave you alone.
It's true.
They're like nice little dinosaurs.
Oh, we do like dinosaurs. Do you have anything else for this episode? It doesn't feel like there's much to it, does there?
No, it's funny to say when... It's just because of its odd structure, I think, is the fact that you have a pretty straight, very condensed monster movie to begin with. Then you have this lengthy retrospective bit where the two of them just sit on a rock. And if I was Scully, I would have kicked him off the rock and said, "You want to see a monster? Let's see if you can find it now." And then you just have a really quick, kind of unsatisfactory wrap-up with the gator.
Yeah. Which, again, is why I feel... This is part of why I felt that there was stuff on the rock was inserted into a script that was struggling. rather than being the intention from the beginning. Because to me, at least, it feels like Darren Morgan wrote the stuff on the rock.
Mm.
And so it feels like the boat sank and they were rescued by Paul Faraday very quickly. And then you go to the climax, and basically it was like, we are missing 15 minutes here. We need something to pad it out.
Yeah.
At least that's how it feels to me. Given it again, it's like Avatar. Weirdly, it's an episode that kind of at war with itself. It can't decide which angle it actually wants to look at.
Ultimately, it's not a paranormal episode again as
No.
well. Like a few of the other ones we've seen in the season, the only thing that makes it paranormal is that final blink and you miss it shot of the plesiosaur.
Which feels like the punchline to a joke, ultimately, is how it feels.
I must admit, the first time I watched it, I missed the plesiosaur as well in it, because it is 3 seconds of film at the end. Apparently it was originally supposed to be a practical effect drawn behind a boat as well, but they couldn't get it looking right, so it's actually CGI, and it looks pretty good, to be fair.
It does look pretty good.
At the end. But at the same time, that's the literal paranormal sting in the episode that is otherwise entirely played straight.
Yep. I mean, we can't explain what happened to the rest of it, because the gator can have done some of it, but can it have done all of it?
I think pretty much all of those are gator attacks.
Yeah. But no one, as you said, no one at any point suggests it, because no one says, do you have gators in the lake?
I don't know much about how gators hunt either, but I know crocodiles kind of stockpile things sometimes in caves and stuff like that. So you might have that idea of, like, with the scout leader's legs bobbing to the surface.
Yeah.
As I know in Australia, often they don't find the victims or at all in crocodile attacks because they will drag them underwater and stuff them into hiding places.
Okay.
But whether gators do the same thing, I don't know. Gators aren't as dangerous as crocodiles because they're just not as big.
Yeah. But then, surely there'd be a population of gators in the lake as well, not just one. I mean, I suppose it could be the last one, and that's why no one knows it's there.
Oh,
but...
that one's grown super big. It's an anecdote for my family of once when I was a kid, my family stayed at a resort in Florida that had a big lake as part of it that we were all swimming with, until one day we were walking home and we just saw this 3-foot gator sat on the bank. And my dad pulled someone aside and said, well, is it safe for them to swim there? We've just spotted this gator. And he said, you're in Florida. There are gators in every body of water. And they're just so dismissive and everyday, because I think the gist was that where there was an area where it was loud and there were a lot of families splashing around, the gators just wouldn't come near it.
Yeah.
Whereas, you'd be more dangerous if you were in a quiet bit of the lake by yourself or something like that, where a gator might have a pot chance at you.
Yeah.
So they're evidently not that threatening on that basis. And I know that when they get super massive, that often that's when they get relocated in Florida, if you spot a 12-foot one in a lake or something like that.
Yeah. So, the episode is just really frustrating. I don't understand. Surely the notion you have an alligator would not be beyond the realms of plausibility to just mention as a possibility of what is being spotted.
It's baffling. When they asked Faraday if there's any large predators in the lake, that no one would just say, well, gators.
Yeah. I think the other problem is, and it's a weird one, of you don't get a sense of Big Blue as a historical aspect of the town.
Imagine we're marketing this on Champ, the creature that's supposedly in Lake Champlain.
Yeah, or just a Loch Ness Monster.
Mm.
But Big Blue as a creature is, you get one anecdote of the cow encounter, and I don't think anyone else says anything. Because then we've got the monster hunter who never sees it, which par for the course. But you don't know. It's one of the things where you'd expect everyone in the area to have a story of some relative or some family friend who definitely did see it.
It'll always be someone disconnected like that, yeah.
But I expect more of those, and we don't get that either. It's not embracing that kind of attitude or that kind of area.
Mm.
Because you expect the monster sightings from the friend of a friend or the friend of a family member, just someone who you cannot get a direct access to.
My second cousin's uncle once saw it.
Yeah, that kind of thing. There's just, we don't get that. We get the few bits of merchandise, one story, and one attempt to fake it. And then Big Blue is kind of tied off to the side until it turns out that, Big Blue is real. But not what people were seeing, because now I'm very confused.
Yeah, Just baffling, really.
Yeah, it's not a good episode.
As you say, it's not like Nessie or Champ, where there's been a long history of sightings of this,
Yeah.
or supposed sightings, that have been marketed off heavily.
Yes. And, photos of it. I mean, they don't even have photos of Big Blue.
We have... There's the really famous one of the Nessie, which everyone knows how it's been faked, but it's still the thing you think of when you think of Nessie sightings, is that one photo.
Exactly. And that one, there are a few other photos as well. It's like, the hardcore monster hunters never managed to catch them, but there are photos of them. The provenance of it is immaterial, but we don't get the Big Blue again.
You have stories. I remember one when I was a kid of somebody driving home who swears that the Nessie dragged itself across the road in front of their car. There's no photographic evidence, but you have that anecdote where somebody's contacted the paper saying, I just saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that feels weird that we don't get that, given that this apparently is the tourism aspect of that lake, given they've paid for, was it 4 or 5 billboards?
Yeah.
That can't be cheap to do that, to maintain them in the lead up to getting to the shop in the lake.
They're all worded a bit like the ad campaign for the American Godzilla.
Yeah.
With, hinting at how big this mysterious creature is.
And again, given this is like the year before Godzilla, I've got to wonder if the Godzilla people were looking saying, hey.
Yeah, there was like that famous one that said something like its foot is the size of this bus.
Yeah, that
and didn't give you an indication of what they were talking about.
Yeah, until the first trailer started to appear. So yeah, you got to wonder if the Godzilla people were looking at this as well.
Mm.
But I mean, if we don't have anything else,
no, I think that's everything.
I won't make you do Conspiracy Corner, because what on earth are you going to do with that?
Yeah, no Conspiracy Corner this week. I'll bring it back when we do Talitha Kumi next time.
Talitha Kumi. So yeah, in 2 weeks' time we have Wet Wired and Talitha Kumi. But in the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42@universidon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Please do come and look at our Twitter. As I mentioned previously, we are trying to collect your opinions on what you thought of this season, just so we can discuss them in our next episode.
Yes, please. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where we are currently embarking on a Let's Play of the first X-Files game, the FMV 90s PSX game, which has been slow going, but we're getting there. This has been a fraught month for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, as noted on Twitter, it's not been our best month, but hopefully after our week off, things are going to start getting better for us. Just so you're aware, there are 3 levels on our Patreon. You can back us at any level. They do have slightly different perks, so do check that out on there. At every level, you will be able to access the Let's Play and any other special episodes we do. Following the Let's Play, we are planning on Let's Playing the PlayStation 2 game as well. And we also plan to look at the adult novels, the likes of Whirlwind and Ruins, and possibly the comics.
And as a teaser for the comic, we discovered, quite to our surprise, the other day that one of the issues has some bearing or some relation to a recent, fairly big budget and well-known horror film, but we'll keep exactly what connection is quiet for now, but that was a surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you can't unsee it once you've seen it.
Well, yeah. Especially if it turns out that this is a legitimate theory that's been doing the rounds, and therefore inspired both instances.
That's quite a way off, but I will do some heavy research on that one before we discuss it.
Our theme music is Envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that in Compotech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next week, remember,
you can't turn your back on nature.